I have noticed when I went to go do my morph targets for the eyes for this character that because of the way I built them, and I had this vertex kind of offset from where it's supposed to be, as well as a few other things about the way I put the eyes together, that they weren't really ideal. So I decided to just remake the eye. One other problem too that I had was when I rotate the eye, when it goes down at a steep angle like this, and the pupil's highly dilated, this hollowed out part of the eye, this geometry would show through into the eye, which we don't want. So what I did is I went into Tools, went into Viewport Canvas, and remember to make a backup copy before you start painting on that again. I loaded into the layer the original image for the character's face, and I just painted this in here, saved it as a new file. And so I painted this black in here so that if it does turn and this black shows up on the inside of the pupil, it's not going to matter because it's black inside the pupil anyway. To remake the eye, let's go to front view. All I did was I created a sphere, kind of matched it up to the original sphere that I had in size so that it would fit in the eye socket really well. And I used wireframe mode for that. And I would bring the segments down for a game character. I think I used 20. So after I did that, I went into here, did the reset X-form thing because I did some scaling. So unless you're scaling at a vertex mode, you kind of want to do this. And then collapse. This will collapse to a mesh. For editable poly modes, I'm going to go to that. I think what I'll do for now is I'll just grab this middle one, use soft selection, turn up the pinch value, and pull this in. And actually, before doing that, probably grab a ring here, turn off soft selection, and use connect. And I'm going to do the same thing on the inside here. Make a ring. Oops, I guess you can't select a ring on the inside. So I'll just go front view, ignore back facing. Just going to affect the front and grab these, and then click connect. Next we'll grab this vertex in the middle. Just going to go over to display here for a second, and I'm going to hide the shapes just temporarily and the bone objects. Grabbing that middle vertex, use soft selection, select and move, and pull it in. I got something weird going on. Let's bring this down. Oh, I got the pinch value turned up too high, that's the problem. And I'll turn this down. And might need to turn up the pinch a bit more. That is better. So that's kind of how we want the middle of the eye to be. And if you wanted just to simplify the texturing process and such, you could make these into separate parts, detach them and reattach them. I'm not going to do that though. I'm just going to be careful on how I do my texture mapping. We would need a UV map. So type in U, go to UV map. Let's open up the material editor. So this is what I was using, but I might paint some more white around here, make it a little bit more cartoony and a little less realistic. When the eye moves to extreme angles, we don't really want this red showing up too much. I'd prefer for it to stay more white. So I'm probably just going to repaint this later so that there's a little bit more white around this. I'm going to go with planar and drag this right onto here. Okay, so that does not look quite right. Oh yeah, note, go back into editable poly, make sure that none of this stuff is selected because that'll mess you up. Okay, so we're going to go planar, and I think we want UI. Let's go front view. You can manipulate this gizmo in the background too. Grab the gizmo with this and we'll make it a little bit bigger and change its position a little bigger. There, so this black is kind of where it starts going in, and this black kind of matches up with this ring here. So that actually kind of worked out pretty good. We can even touch up the texture too after if we need to. Use this toggle thing here so we can see what the end result is. And I don't want to get rid of too much of the eye. I'm optimizing it a bit, but I've come to realize if I turn the eye too much, there'll be parts of that eye missing that I don't really want missing. So let's just get rid of these particular polygons back here. And I'm going to hit Control-Z and uncheck ignore back facing because I want to get rid of all these. Let's toggle this show end result. We seem to have messed it up by doing that. Oh yeah, I forgot. It's going to mess you up every time if you have one of these still selected. So go back in here. What we should have done is we should have collapsed it and then did the modifications because it would just keep the UV coordinates properly. So we kind of messed ourselves up here. Because now I gotta re-edit this. Well, I suppose I can just hit Control-Z a bunch of times. Get back to what we had. This is what I was going to recommend doing. Collapse. Yes. Then we can grab these and delete them. The UVs stay intact. I don't really want to delete any more than that though. Okay, so we'll check our center, make sure our center pivot is still the same. So I have actually messed it up before. So it is centered, so we don't have to fix that. Since I've actually deleted the eye, I'm just going to go into import merge and pick one of the older files and grab just the eye object out of there. Okay, so in this merge, I'm just going to select the left and right eyes of the original, and we're going to use this scene material. So now we kind of have a reference to go by as to how this should be. Just hide this. Alright, I'm going to click on the line. Whoops, first grab this. Click on a line. Align it to the left eye. And the positions. I could say orientations, but I'm not going to. Now we got to scale it. Let's go to vertex mode. Select all the vertices. Make sure ignore backfacing is turned off. And we'll scale it until it fits the same size as the other eye. Somehow, miraculously, I already had it the same size. I don't know how I managed to do that. Just by sheer chance, I guess. Okay, so we can hide this reference eye. Hide selected. Hide this one for now. I'll hit Alt-X. So where this one comes down, it's kind of intersecting with this part here and this part here, and that's where we kind of want it to be to match up to where we had it before, because we want it to be the same as it was before. Not that it's really that important. So I'm going to hide this object and I'm going to hit Alt-X on here. Okay, so I'm just going to grab this using Shift to click the second one to get the full ring and scale it out a wee bit. It doesn't even have to be much. It'll be exactly the way the other one was. Something like that. Okay, and this is a different eye, reference eye, so it's just a different trial version I made. Probably should pull this in a bit since I scaled it. And I probably should pull this one out a bit. I made the mistake before of trying to instance this over to this side. You can't actually get away with that as far as I can tell, because anything you do with one eye is going to affect the other eye, and that might not be desirable. I'm just going to copy this X location here and shift drag this to the left. I'm going to call this right eye. This one will be left eye. I think dragging this forward was probably a mistake. Okay, so I'm just going to pause the video and fix this up real quick. Alright, let's go to the display properties, and I want to make the bones and the shapes visible again. So the bones of the eyes are facing the wrong direction at the moment, and that's because they're pointed towards the controller positions. This initial controller X is -7, Y is -31.5. This is just if you want to keep your original values. It's not really that important. And then get the main eye controller, which X is 0, Y is -31.5, Z is 57.4. Okay, just in case I want those original values again. What we'll do is we'll align it to the base of one of these eye bones. Doesn't matter which one. So we're going to align this with the right eye bone, just by the Z and not by the X, just the Z. That's that vertical axis. So now this should already be aligned to the Z, and same with this. Should already be aligned to the Z. And what we should have done there is we should have aligned it also to this X, and align this one to this X. So now we got the eye pointers pointing in a default direction that's straight ahead. That'll make setting this up a bit easier. I should just be able to modify it, or add a skin modifier, and add, let's say, right eye bone, select, and this one will need a skin modifier. Add left eye bone, like so. Okay, let's make sure these actually follow. So now when I grab this, they should both follow, and look at wherever those positions are. And grab this, and its default position here, I want it to be -7. If the character is looking at something close, it'll automatically make the vision point more inward towards the object that the character is looking at, which looks a little more natural. Okay, so now if I drag this out, character looks more straight ahead. Drag it in, character is looking more towards what's right in front of the character's face. Okay, so effectively we should be able to have the character's eyes look around in any direction to any extreme. We just got to fix the texturing for some of the extremes so that it's a little more white, a little more cartoony. I wanted to go for a mix of cartoony and realistic, but more cartoony than realistic, so preferably more of a pure white would be better. So I just popped over into Photoshop for just a second, and I'm using transform selection. I'm selecting using the ellipse selection tool, and I think what I'm going to do here is I don't want to affect anything inside this. I'm just going to duplicate this layer in case I mess something up, and I'm going to select inverse, grab a soft brush, turn down the opacity quite a bit now, and painting with the white. So I decided to go with a slightly more cartoony look. I'm going to deselect. Okay, there's a bit of a rim here on the edge, which I can touch up, but I think it's going to look fine at a distance. You won't really notice anyway. So we'll save this as, we'll put it back where this other one was, but we'll call this Kid Eye. We'll make sure to save out a PNG version too. And we'll load that new one into the material. Okay, so I dragged out a copy of the eye we had from before and then removed the skin modifier so that it's not going to be snapped back onto the bone. And I think before I actually proceed with the morph targets, I forgot to create a outside shell for this eye, which we're going to have to create a shader for that we can use in our game. We may use cube mapping or spherical environmental mapping and kind of get a reflection from the environment and have some sort of strong glossy specular highlights on the eye. I may even add a bump map. Most of these effects are only going to be triggered though when the camera's at a certain distance from the eyes. Otherwise they won't be active, and obviously if the camera's facing away from the character, for example, then those effects will be turned off. So they're only for when they're in view and they're within a certain range. I'm just going to shift drag this to the right as a copy, and I'm going to go into vertex modify, select everything, make sure our back facing is turned off, and scale it out, not much, in fact, just a tiny bit. So the vertices that we want to modify here, let's start with the center one here. Bring it out. I think soft selection might be a good choice here. Let's pull this down. I don't want pinch. I think I want bubble in this case. Let's change the fall off a little bit more influence on the surrounding stuff. I'm turn off soft selection and just grab this middle vertex, pull it back in, and shift click this to grab this ring, and click connect. Or we can click this little box beside the connect so we can adjust exactly where it is. And I kind of want it toward the outside. And check mark. Shift click this. I want that one expanded a bit. Or no, I don't. I want this one expanded a bit. And pulled out a little bit. So that should create sort of a subtle change in the highlights along this part of the eye. And for this object, for material, I'm going to drag this empty material onto this one and replace it. And we could use a fancy material in here, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this fairly see-through, and I'm just going to apply some kind of shader to it in the game. So here, we may make a version of this too, so that it's more suitable for cinema if we decide that we're going to do some of that. Well, I suppose we could add another material here too and do something like that, but I'm just going to keep this simple for now. So I'm going to align this to this, and I don't think it would matter if I did that because it's a copy. So it's just aligning the position. Oops. Just make sure you don't have anything underneath selected here. Just want to select the whole object and then align to here. The purpose of this is first of all just to check to see how it looks when it renders. It looks okay. I think adding some bump mapping would probably do something for it. So I checked off bump here, chose a normal map, and I'm going to choose a normal map image of the eye, which is generated from the original eye. So I'm going to put it 100% for now. Let's see what that looks like. So that definitely strays away from the cartoony look. It would definitely be an interesting option if we wanted to go for a lot of realism. I'm just going to uncheck that because I'm probably not going to use it because I want this character to look a little less realistic. I don't want to go too overkill with the realism. Okay, so grabbing this outer eye, yeah, I think I got it selected. I'll shift drag it over and going to rename it right eye cover, I guess, or shell. I'll call it cover so you know it goes over top. Eye cover material. And since this is nice and easy, I'm just going to shift drag this to the right, change this to left eye cover. Okay, and I'm going to align this one to this one. Okay, actually no. Before I do that, let's get rid of some of this unnecessary geometry. Top view. I would say almost for sure this stuff would never be visible. Might even be able to get rid of that row on this side. Looks like I have this one lined up here. Oh, I didn't get rid of the back geometry on this one. It's interesting. I think I'll just get rid of all this. Let's delete those. I should drag these up. And rename this one right eye, left eye, right eye cover, left eye cover, and I'm gonna align, I'll align this one to this one, align that one to that one. So grabbing just these two here, let's align to this bone by position, and grabbing these here, we'll align to this bone here, just position. Now, I think unfortunately if I add skin to this now, and add the bone, it doesn't automatically align up with the eye bone. So again, I have to go back to the defaults of having these eye bones facing straight forward. Using wireframe mode, I can click on the wire for this eye, and now that I got these straight, now it would make sense to add the skin modifier and say right eye bone. Then I can grab this outer one, the cover, skin modifier, and do the same thing. And we'll duplicate that process on the other side. And we can return these to their close-up positions, which I believe was -7 and +7 when the eyes are looking at something close up. This way, as we bring it further out, the eyes adjust. Okay, so that is without bump mapping, and just out of curiosity, I'm going to see what it looks like with bump mapping turning on here. Tempted to keep that, actually. I like that. A little more subtle. 60%. There you go, that looks better. Now, I think we can keep the cover as is and just do morph targets for the underlying eye. So I'm going to go F3 here so I can pick the, no, not the right eye cover, this one. Say right eye up here. And if I shift drag it to the right, it should pop back into place as soon as I hit OK for copy, because we got the skin modifier on the stack. So let's remove that. And you should see that it's facing straight forward. For pupil dilation, see, we can go right eye big and then have one for small. So with this loop selected, let's make a big version and just change the position so that it still looks like a sphere and so that the cover will still cover it. I'm gonna grab this part here too, open it up a little more, and actually pull it in a bit. And even though the outside of the eye doesn't do this, we could boost this up just a touch. That's kind of to reduce the extremity of this angle here. Okay, we actually should have made 2 copies of that before we went ahead and did that. So we'll get another original copy. Shift drag to the right, and we'll take the skin modifier off. Since this is an exact copy, this other eye, this wouldn't work if it wasn't an exact copy, but since it is, we can actually duplicate this again. Or no, wait, we can just use the same morph target because it's an exact copy. Just call it eye small. And I'll change this one to eye big instead of right eye big. And pull this inside one in first. And pull it back. Okay, so kind of keep in mind what kind of angle this is. Scale this in quite a bit for extreme dilation. And shift right. And let's go top. Maybe I'll grab this here and just scale it in a bit to kind of keep that round shape. Normally it's just the pupil would actually change, but I'm not going for ultimate realism here. Okay, so eventually we're going to rig the morph controls into the eye controller, but for now we need to go to the eye itself. So let's go to the right eye first and add a morpher, like so. And we'll pick object from C for the first slot. Big. So now we can morph target that eye. However, it doesn't look right at all. It suggests to me that something doesn't match. I'm not sure what I did wrong, because this outside one definitely shouldn't be changing. But anyway, we'll grab that small one and see if it's okay. That one. See, it's doing the same thing. This outside one is changing. Not too sure why that would be. Okay, so I just made a different copy of the 2 eyes, and this time instead of expanding the very outside, I would just wanted to keep it the same, which is actually how it's supposed to work, and just the inner 2 circles change size. Selecting, okay, I'm selecting the cover here, let's go F3. Selecting the right eye. Oh, make sure to add your morph target after or before the skin modifier, not after. So let's go morph target, morpher. And I'll grab this, grab this one and this one. There, that looks right. I actually could have made the big dilation even bigger than that. Well, I still can actually. Let's grab this, control click that one, shift click that one, and we'll make it a bit bigger yet. And let's pull this in a bit so it's still round. Okay, that should be good. Okay, so going into the morpher again, test it out, and for some reason, I know why, we didn't update it. Alright, go to the bottom and click reload morph target. Actually, we can go right here and just hit reload all morph targets. There we go. You can see how it looks in rendered. And then we'll go the other way and see how that looks. And this is a maximum expression. That looks about right. We could even gone a bit smaller with that too, actually. But okay, let's grab this other one here and click on the one below it because we don't want to put the morph target, the morpher modifier, I should say, after skin. That would be a mistake. So I'm going to go load multiple targets. So what I want to do is I want to wire in controls on this one so I can control the pupils from here. So add an attribute holder. Let's just add another section of parameters that we can control here. So under animation, let's start some new parameters. We'll go with a spinner 0 to 100, which I think is default, and I'll call it pupil dilation. Or actually, let's call this one pupils bigger. Yeah, that makes sense. Float, and we'll click add. And I'm going to hit Control Z, and I'm going to say left line add. Right line. That way all the spinners line up along the right side. Except this should say pupils bigger. If we wanted, we could also add controls for each individual pupil. Pupils smaller. So I want to wire those parameters. The modified attribute holder pupils bigger, and just going to zoom in here. It says right eye, which is correct, so I'm going to click it. And I want the modified object the morpher, dilate big. So pupils bigger is going to affect dilate big. Connect. And I'll just test that out. It seems to work, but it seems to be rather slow. So let's disconnect this. Let's modify that parameter. Click on edit, bigger. I'm going to change this to 10. Accept parameter changes, apply changes, and we're going to edit this one. It's going to go to 10, accept, apply, and that should do the trick. Okay, so the wiring parameters for this, bigger, modified, morpher, big. We're going to have to say times 10 because it's only going 0 to 10 now. Let's see how that looks. Looks good. Let's grab this pupil smaller on this side, dilate small on this side, connect to the right, and times 10. So then that makes that go in. We also want this one to connect to this one. So I want it to control both. We could chain it too, although I don't know if I really want to do that. Okay, so clicking on this one, I'm going to refresh on this side, and we're going to go modified, morpher, big, times 10, to the right, connect. So let's just see if that works. Okay, that messes everything up for some reason. Can't do two at once? Maybe not. Oh, that's weird. I thought I just disconnected the left eye. Must have the index messed up right now. Okay, so we'll disconnect every reference here. Wire parameter dialog. The red eye is selected on the wrong side here. Oh well, we can go backwards. I'm not opposed to that. I want to disconnect those. Alright, so now if I adjust this, nothing happens. That's what we want. So just redoing what I did earlier. And I think these ones are still set, so let's just make sure. Okay, so we'll have to change this to right pupil and left pupil, and then we'll add ones for the other side. Okay, let's try out this left one. Okay, and the right one still works. Good. Alright, that's kind of preferable anyway, to be able to control each one individually. So, I want them to have big dilated pupils. This is what it'll look like. Bring these back down to 0, and then we'll boost up the small ones. Okay, so he looks kind of scared or something. Scared or mad, I'm not sure. Okay. And you can hide your morph targets in a layer, which is what I'm going to do. So we're going to go to Manage Layers. Grab these two guys, select on here, add to this layer. So if I hide all these other layers, the regular eyes, for some reason, are in the morph target layer. So we'll grab on those two, and we'll put them back in geometry. It's weird. Oh, it only grabbed the outside parts. Oh no, I had visibility of the left and right eye toggled invisible. That is the reason. Oh, I get it. These are the old left and right eye, which is why they were toggled invisible. So let's select this. Okay, that is indeed the old version. I have a backup copy of this file, so we're just going to delete these. I don't think we'll use these old versions. The small case RI, right click to select, and hit delete. Okay, so I already put the eye covers in here. So those are good. But I didn't put these in there. We'll add those selected. Whoops. Control Z, add them to geometry. And now they disappear from here, but they are visible in regular geometry. And that's what we want. Alright, now for some more interesting morph targets. I mean, we could even add morph targets to the hair and to the ears to give them a little bit more expression. But I think we're just going to go for some basic facial expressions as well as some phonemes for speaking. Actually, I think it's phonemes. I think phonemes has something to do with biology. Okay, we're not going to edit the normals. We're just going to add a morpher in between. So let's go to morpher. Before we did that, though, we actually probably should have made a copy of the head first. And you actually can have an entire body and head completely connected as one piece of geometry and just make morph targets for the face. It's just a matter of detaching those parts and setting the morph targets for those parts. I can't remember exactly how I did that offhand. I've done it before, though, but we're just going to do morph targets for the head, so we're going to make copies of the entire skin for the head. That way we can make very expressive alterations to the head so that the ears can match the expression too a little bit. So perhaps I will shift drag this to the left as a copy, and that's going to call this template head, template morph head. And then in this I'm going to remove the skin, remove the morpher, and I'm going to collapse this. So this is just a template head. Now for creating the morphs for the face, what I would do, so I already did one, but I'll show you how I did it, is you grab the head and just shift drag it to wherever. You'll want to grab the eyes too if you want references for the eyes. And make a copy. It'll snap back to its original position because it's skin modifier. So click on the skin modifier and click remove, and let's see here. We'll remove the morpher modifier and it's remove relax, and I'm going to collapse all. Okay, I'm going to re-add relax, and then I would name this template. So I'm going to delete this one because I already did that over here. It's got this relax modifier on there with a 0.5 value and 1 iteration. If you turn this up, you lose the geometry. I would go 1 at the most. I probably wouldn't go with 2. As far as the value goes too, I don't want it to be too high, so I'm going to go 0.5 tops. And all that does is it helps to smoothen out the geometry a bit when you create morph targets. And we're going to want to be able to mirror morph targets, so I can do like a smirk on half the face and then have it mirrored over so I can do the smirk on the other half of the face. It's exactly the same, and I can combine the two to create an actual smile. To do that, you can use like a mirror morph script. I got this one built in. It doesn't work with this one though because it claims that this is not symmetrical, even though it is. It probably has something to do with the vertex count. Maybe it has an odd number of vertices for some reason. So I'm just going to use another technique. It might be a technique you may not have seen before. What I do is I grab this, drag it up, and let's position it over here. So I could name this one, small one. Grab this, click on mirror, click on copy. So now there's a mirrored copy over top of it. If I drag it away, you can see there's 2 here. The first thing I do is, actually let's get rid of this relax modifier on each copy. So let's select small one, get rid of that relax modifier. The reason is because if you drag select and you got right here it says 2 objects selected, that means we're going to be working on both objects at the same time. And the way that works is when I mirror the second copy back after I'm done making modifications, you'll see that we were actually working on the opposite side of the face. So the reason you do that instead of mirroring it after is because your vertex order, index order, whatever, will be messed up if you try to mirror it. And if you try to mirror it after, and then your morph target will go inside out when you try to morph with a mirrored copy. So doing it this way, you don't have that problem. On the other hand, it's a little more difficult to sculpt the morphed face. It might be just as easy to make two copies and just try to eyeball them and make them approximately the same. There's also morph tools out there, various kinds that you can get, different plugins. I'm not really familiar with all of them, so I'm just going to do it this way. This way seems to work for me. First thing we need to do, we've got the two objects selected, and we're going to hit E for Edit Poly, and I'm going to add a smooth modifier on top of that to smoothen out the normals, and click on Smoothing Group 1. Okay, so make sure you got the two objects selected, and you're in Edit Poly mode. And we'll go to Vertex. I'm going to use soft selection. Zoom in here. In the selector thing over here, I'm going to go to this paint selection region, and then whenever your mouse is an arrow, if you click, hold it, and drag it, you'll get a selection. You don't want to click with crosshairs over top of a vertex because you're only going to get the vertex for one of the copies of the object. So that's why I'm click dragging with this. And I'm using the soft selection because it's sort of a radius grab. Like if you just did individual polygon selection, or I mean if you turned this soft selection off and you did this, you're probably only going to get the one copy. So let's bring down the fall off. Actually, we'll start out here. Let's just be using the drag selection. So all this stuff I kind of want to stretch out this way. I'm going to raise this up at an angle here so I can kind of see how it's going to affect the other side. So before we continue, let's add a symmetry modifier to see how it would affect the other side. Remove that modifier actually. Unclick vertex selection. Now add the symmetry modifier. And click flip. If you don't click flip, it won't work right. Okay, and we'll grab the selection here and start spreading out the smile. What I'm trying to avoid here is I don't want this cheek to puff out too much. I just want to puff out maybe a little bit, but not too much. So let's boost the effect range of this a little bit. And I'm going to kind of alt select some of this. I don't want to really affect the nose that much. Bring this down. So it's kind of the start of a smile. And again, I'm going to drag select some of this stuff and bring down the fall off. Boost up the fall off a bit. Pull this all back and up. It seems to me like I should be rotating this somehow. Make sure to check ignore back facing. We don't want to be selecting vertices down here because then that'll be morphing and that would not be good. And you can also go F3 just to make sure you're not grabbing stuff you don't want to. Okay, let's see. Curve that. Does that look right? Oh, it looks like a smile kind of. From side view, because like the teeth would kind of curve around like this, right? So you'd want this to come back around the sides of the inner jaw. Let's grab some of this and pull down the fall off. Once we kind of got everything the way we want it, we can go in to the individual copies and just kind of relax and smoothen things out. And if it's not 100% symmetrical, like as long as you can't really tell, it doesn't really matter. It's not that big a deal. So I might have to relax some of this geometry a bit later. Got a lot of vertices in here. It's starting to look a little happier. This part might want to bring a little bit. We'll have to smoothen this out after. Okay, so we kind of have a basic smile. With jaw controls, we'd be able to close the mouth and have a closed mouth smile and an open mouth smile. So you don't have to really worry too much about opening and closing it. Just generally want to be able to spread that across and arch it up a bit with the morph target. And I don't know, I feel like it should be wider, a little more expressive. I like to exaggerate my expressions a little bit. There, that looks better right there. It's quite terrifying actually. Spread that out. Let's bring this down. Trying to create a bit of a cheek crease here. It's kind of not really working out the way I wanted it to. This should be smoother, I think. I would say this stuff here just needs to move back a bit, or this stuff here needs to move forward a bit or something. You'll notice that I'm always drag selecting with this to make sure that I'm getting geometry for both copies. We'll probably want to fix some of this up. Yeah, that's a really crazy looking smile. We'll fix it up after. So I'm going to deselect. I think I'll just fix up each individual copy before I do anything else in here. Right before the smooth, well, I can get rid of this symmetry modifier now. Oops, I want both selected before I do that. So I can get rid of this symmetry. And let's put a relax in here. And we can actually select the polygons we want to relax. So let's just do this and use the grow button. And oh yeah, let's alt select these. I don't need to relax those. Okay. Whoa, what happened here? It would seem that when I was moving some of this stuff around, some of this stuff got moved. That is not good. There is a trick to fixing that. It involves surface conformity. So I'm just going to pause the video and just redo this. And I'm going to isolate my selection that I'm working on. Okay, so this time I was a little more careful to make sure I wasn't selecting anything I didn't want to by hitting F3 every once in a while to see where my selections are. I added this polyselect modifier after the symmetry modifier here. So it's only going to affect this side, but that's okay because symmetry is just to see what it's going to look like as a full smile. So we can even disable this symmetry here, and it's only going to affect the selected based on this soft selection here. Oh, that's weird. Why does that look wrong? This does not look like what I had selected. So I kind of want to smooth this stuff out. Let's boost the fall off a little bit, and then we can go click on relax, and if I adjust this, you'll see it's only affecting the selected polygons based on how much selection percentage they have in soft select. So I kind of want to get rid of these creases here a little bit. That's actually making it worse. It's not perfect. I'm going to get rid of this symmetry modifier. Now there's going to be another relax applied to it with this one because this one has a relax later on in the stack after the morph. So it might smoothen it out a bit better. So I've got the one copy selected at the moment. If I drag this one to the right, I think this was a mirrored copy, this one. Should be able to, no clone, should be able to do that. And I'm not sure if in its current format if I can use that as these as a morph target. I think I might have to collapse them, but I'm just going to check just in case I don't have to. So maybe I'll load multiple targets here and grab these two. And yeah, it worked. I was able to grab them. So there's the left and there's the right. And if we put them together, we've got a smile. You can vary it. This is a partial smile on one side, partial on the other. And then you can take advantage of this stuff. Use a rotation here. Sort of a cute smile. And have the head go back. So that works. And that's the beginning of the facial morph targets. So I'll probably make another video showing a bit more about morph targets and maybe any tricks I might come up with along the way. Let's transform to 0 and transform to 0. Okay, I guess those are already at 0. We're also going to rig up morph target control so that we don't have to actually select the head geometry itself. We can select a shape and then control all the facial targets with that. Probably this one up here, because that is the head controller. So already we can start to develop some expressions. I'll add a smile. Oh yeah, we've got the smile active already. Let's just do it to one side so it looks like he's talking out the side of his mouth. Yeah, that's not exactly a good expressive facial pose, but it just gives you an idea that there's already a lot of, we haven't even done much yet, and there's already a lot of things we can do with this character.